Welcome to the Home Recording Show. This is episode 311. My name is John Tidey.
And I'm Ryan Canestro.
And today we've got a little grab bag episode talking about some kind of current event topics. First, the Mac Studio, possibility of a vacuum tube shortage, which affects a great part of our industry.
And me emotionally more than actually in reality.
Possibly. We'll talk about it. And also, I recently did a video about a set of wireless mics, and Ryan uses wireless mics professionally, so we're going to compare and contrast a little bit on that topic. What makes a mic prosumer versus professional?
All this and more.
All this and more. And if you want to support the podcast, go to buymeacoffee.com/HRS podcast. I was using the wrong phrase in previous episodes, but I think people figured it out.
Good.
If you want to support the show, $5, and you can buy us a virtual coffee, which helps go towards paying for my time on the editing and Facebook ads so that it actually reaches more than 10 people, things like that. So anything you want to do to support will help, and it gets your name in the episode.
We should maybe send out an email saying, hey, we're doing the show again. To like all the
every
people
episode we get people surprised that we're still doing the show or we're back or something along those lines. And
I'm surprised. I did miss it.
It's not forever, but we're having a good time for right now, and that's the main thing. So first topic is recently announced and recently released
and
Mac
recently
Studio,
purchased by John.
And recently arrived in my home, the Mac Studio. I'll grab the box because I'm excited.
I'm excited for you.
I mean, it's a chunky computer. Here's the Mac Mini box. Here's the Mac Studio box.
Always judge a product by its box size.
That box is ridiculous. It's all cardboard, but it's got springs made out of cardboard inside for shock absorption. It's nuts.
Apple loves their
packaging. A feat of
packaging.
engineering. Apple makes great packaging. As you can tell, I'm excited because it just arrived, and I spent the past 24 hours thinking about it, getting it set up and all this stuff, transferring files, and the internal drive is so ridiculously fast. I was using these little hard drives. These have served me well, handled everything I've thrown at it pretty much. Or if there are issues with it, I wasn't aware of the issues because of drive speed. But these go 45 megabits per second, something like that. Pretty low spec for right now. The internal drive is 4200. So it's like, what is that? 40?
Just 100 times different.
I don't know. I'm bad with that. But it's a big deal. It makes a big difference transferring a gig of files in seconds versus minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely have the speed, but then you don't have as much capacity, which is always the rub on solid state devices.
Right. And also these, you can't replace it. You can't upgrade it.
No.
If that drive is dead, the computer is dead. But I mean, fast as hell. So fast. So
and I'm interested to hear how the processing speed works for you and the amount of video memory. I mean, it seems like it's not even possible to do what they just did.
It's nuts. So I got the M1 Max chip because it's cheaper, and so I'm going from the M1 base model Mac Mini with 8 gigs of RAM, and that 8 gigs of RAM feels like enough most days on that system. It's really like when you've got Reaper running, when you've got OBS running, when you've got Firefox running with multiple tabs, that you use up all that 8 gigs plus it going into the drive for swap files. And that drive is fast, and you don't notice it until it gets, several gigs in and using 12 gigs of memory for just Firefox. I only have 8. No wonder everything's starting to slow down. And it gets weird at that point. So this new computer, faster drive, 32 gigs of the unified memory, they call it. And it's just part of the processor, and it can't get a faster connection to the RAM than that.
And the upgrade model, they put two chips together. They actually are able to connect two chips together directly.
The bandwidth is so fast that it's basically one chip.
Yeah, it's
twice as big. And
yeah, they basically just had enough connections that it just connects across like 100 pins or whatever it was to
10,000 or something.
Yeah, ridiculous. And it just makes a super chip. You could just stack them.
Yeah. This is a really big deal for the industry because it's also like 200 watts less power draw compared to like anything similar.
Well, then it outperforms their own Mac Pro line.
Yeah, it does. In some situations.
Yeah.
Not every situation. I think the single core speed is about twice as fast. It's going to be interesting to see how this M1 architecture changes the industry, how Intel's going to keep up, how AMD is going to change their thing. I think AMD has something similar with the big Threadripper chips. They're physically big, but they're also hot.
Yeah, it's a massive amount of processing power, but you're talking about what Apple's doing is making massive amounts of processing power energy efficient, which is absolute insanity. Smaller packages, lower heat, and
less energy costs for you as well. So your electricity bill is going to go down as well. So not me when I've got three of the computers stress testing them at the same time, but it's really cool. And it is very, very quiet. So like half of the internals of the case is just cooling, but I don't hear it at all. It has a noise compared to the M1 Mac Mini. There is a difference in sound, but you got to put your ear right up against it to hear anything. So that's good. It's quieter than my PC beside me. It's quieter than the hiss from my speakers.
And comes stock with a 10 gig network port.
Yeah. That used to be a pretty big, expensive
$200
upgrade.
bucks.
Yeah.
So I mean, just fast in, fast out, ton of ports, fast to your network. The thing's a beast. It's a workhorse.
The thing that might let me down from being able to completely eliminate two computers, right? Like going from the M1 plus a PC for everything I need to do will be like, does OBS have a M1 native version? And I don't think they do technically. Last night I was testing, like, I do all my video in Reaper, which is not optimized for video. It doesn't use the video card really at all, anything like that. So I did test the native version versus the Rosetta version. Native version was rendering out 2 minutes faster. Right. It's a 40-second clip, renders it out 4.5 minutes on my M1 running the Intel build of Reaper, which is my usual one, the one I've been using for a year. I'm used to that speed on a heavy project. And then switching over to the studio, I got, on the native version, I was rendering out in 2 minutes. The weird thing is I tested again on the M1 with the native build of Reaper, and then that one actually ended up being faster by 5 seconds. So I don't know.
The waters are a bit muddy at this point because there are too many variables, and
so many variables.
It's hard to pin down which variable's making the difference.
Right. Let's talk about why I bought it, I guess.
Yeah, John, why did you buy it?
Because when I bought the M1, I waited until it got to the cheapest point, which is when it finally showed up in the refurbished store. And so I got one at a discount. I had already put off that purchase several months. And, I dealt with all these all the plugins being not ready for it and all that stuff. And I knew that that was the first version of M1, and it was only going to get better from there, or they were going to abandon it completely. And I saw that they were not abandoning it. They were doubling down and making huge improvements in speed.
And I think a year from now, when the software catches up, it's going to be an absolute beast and nothing will be able to touch it.
All the native Apple software that I've used with it has been fantastic, as long as I have enough RAM to keep everything running. And I never close apps. I keep everything open, and I could optimize better, but with the power, I don't think you need to. Apple was also offering a pretty good trade-in value. So $400 back on the M1 Mini, that's Canadian, off of a $2,500 purchase. It's pretty good, I thought. So I spent maybe $30 a month to use the Mac Mini for a year. I think that's fair.
Yeah, not bad.
And so, yeah, I'll keep this one for a couple years probably. And there's probably something that's going to be the same price that's got a good trade-in value on this one. That's, again, 2 or 4 times faster. And so this one seems to be 2 to 4 times faster than what I've been using for the year, which has been reliable and fast and does everything I need and more. So I feel like because I can afford it, because I've tried the M1, I know that it's safe. And I was shocked by how low the price was in a way, based on the performance. I was expecting to start at five grand, but seeing it 2,500 Canadian or what is that, 2,000 US for the base model.
And then how much was the M1 Mini?
M1 Mini, Canadian price, $780, I think it was, for the refurbished Canadian. Okay. But they're like $599 US new. I've recommended that computer, since day one. It's the easiest off-the-shelf computer for recording. It gives you lots of options for running any Intel software, any native Mac software as well. And they perform very well either way you go. So I'm trying to do everything with native software now, because over the past week, and this is going to date the podcast, we've recorded 2 episodes at a time. And so this might be 6 weeks.
Scoot this one ahead if you want to be current.
Probably won't. iLock just updated their software. So now so many of the developers can release their updates. So we saw SoftTube, and Plugin Alliance has over 100 of their plugins, M1 native, as of this week. So that's awesome. So the companies that aren't keeping up are like Isotope, of course, IK Multimedia, not a lot of others that I rely on. Those are the 2 big ones in my mind that I will miss, but I might switch over to Arturia. I might switch over to SoftTube.
And they'll come around too, because this is the new direction.
Yeah, I think IK will be good about not charging for the upgrade, but I don't expect Isotope will. It's going to be another paid version update, probably.
Yeah, and it takes a tremendous amount of work to change an entire architecture and then work out all the bugs, and it's not easy.
Well, yeah. Smaller companies can do it faster, so I don't know.
That's a good point.
That's enough about the Mac Studio. That's been on my brain for the past week.
Exciting though, and I've definitely read the announcement. I was like, this looks amazing.
I watched the thing and bought it within an hour of the live stream, and yeah, a good thing I did, because no one can get them right now. Yeah. Everyone else has to wait until late June now, I think.
And the problem for me is I wanted something in the middle that would do a PCIe card from Apple, and I can't get that without paying $5 grand minimum, and I don't like that.
Yeah, so that's the thing, and the Mac Pro isn't dead yet. They did announce that the update to the Mac Pro is coming. The very last thing they said at that.
And they're going to go ARM on that, right?
Yeah, it will probably, if it's not 1 Ultra in there, it's going to be 2 Ultras.
Yeah.
That's going to be crazy. And if it has PCIe 4X slots or something like that as well, even if it has like 1 or 2 PCI slots for separate dedicated video or whatever, that would be crazy. Yeah, moving on from there, tube shortages due to sanctions in Russia.
Yeah, I hear there's some problems in Russia.
Yeah, there is a few problems with Russia right now. So there was an announcement from Ultra Harmonics that they would not be able to get tubes in from the Russian factories. Like getting it into the US was not possible anymore. This was a problem because there was already such a limited number of factories that make vacuum tubes right now. In 2019, I believe it was, there's a Chinese factory, had a fire, and that has been shut down. They've been trying to get running again ever since. My first reaction to the Electro Harmonics announcement was like, so what? There's got to be Chinese tubes being made, but I didn't know about that fire. And then there are the other factories are like the one for
Slovakia
JJ.
for JJ.
Is it? Yeah. So they're already at max capacity. They have been.
And they're on back order everything. And
Yeah.
that was before all this went down. So that's only going to get worse.
Right. So there was sanctions placed on Russia, so they couldn't export anything, including vacuum tubes. I think that's been partially resolved now, but the price is going to go up.
Well, and hopefully the factory's still making them, stocking them. They know there's going to be a market for it. So
as soon as I heard about this, I looked on Sweetwater, and all of the tubes were, waiting for stock. So somebody bought them all.
Yep.
First of all, in the near future, are people really going to have to buy a bunch of tubes to replace all the tubes in their stuff?
Tubes last a long time.
They do. And anyone I know that has tube stuff has a bunch of new old stock or a bunch of spares mostly. So this is going to affect production of new amplifiers using tubes.
Yeah. But what you're going to see too, and we've already seen it in the pandemic, when the toilet paper, you couldn't buy it for a week and a half, everyone went nuts, stocked up, and then created a massive shortage. So that's what's going to happen again.
That has happened, I believe.
Yeah.
And
it's going to continue to happen for years.
They probably saw this coming a month ago, or even considering that the preamble to the war was 8 years long. People may have been collecting them for a while.
And there may have been some other additional issues with Russia going back a few years beyond that. There's always been something happening.
Tubes may be hard to get or increased in price. If
Definitely
got a bunch.
In price.
This is a chance to make some extra money, some extra gear money if you don't need your tubes. Who knows?
Call me.
Just saying. The used market is going to be very good for that if you're a seller, in the next couple months.
Well, and the used market's been going crazy with gear. I wanted to buy a USB mixer for my audio cart. There's just no stock.
What kind of USB mixer?
It's Sound Devices. It's because I have the M Audio, not the M Audio. It's the Icon M Plus that works with my mixer.
Okay.
And I'm not a huge fan. Buttons stop working all the time. It's wildly inconsistent. I've been having problems with it. If I was just using it at home for Reaper, cool. Like the button stops working. You just turn it off, turn it back on again. It's fine. In the middle of me having to mix a scene that's going out to 15 sets of headphones with people that get very grumpy real quick when things don't go right. Not loving that. So I wanted to buy the Sound Devices one. I didn't buy it originally because it wasn't available. With all the chip shortages, part shortages, that's affected it. So I have it on back order, but I told all the local sound houses, hey, I want one. Let me know when one comes in. A guy brought one in to sell it, used, and he wanted to sell it for more than the new price. And someone bought it. But I was like, no, not going to do it.
I was actually going to buy that.
Icon?
The Icon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was considering that. I was split between that or the soft tube fader, which I think relies more on software. So, but I don't know. It is nice that it has 10 faders.
Yeah. So when I'm done with this and on my cart and just using it for my Reaper setup, I'll be happy with it. It'd be cool to have the faders and the controls. And
is that the CL12?
I need the CL16.
CL16. This is motorized faders or?
Nope.
Not even. Okay.
Just a bulletproof works every time you do the thing. It does the thing.
It's a controller or
just a controller for my, my mixer.
I mean, that sucks that you can't find one. It's one of those things that's in demand because it's a niche product and there's a shortage.
Well, I've been talking to friends about selling amps and guitars over the pandemic, and they were just crushing it. Stuff they bought for $1,000 was selling for $2 or $3.
Nice.
That's all been happening, and I think we're going to see a lot more of it, especially with chip shortages and all of that. And then Apple releasing all this new fun stuff, and people buying it up as fast as they can make it. They're going to run into those supply chain issues as well.
Yeah,
it's just
I've got a couple old Macs that I need to sell, an old iPad too. But I mean, you got to do Craigslist and you got to talk to people, and then so many people waste your time.
And you traded in that M1?
Training.
That Mac Mini?
I did trade in the M1, yeah.
Because I probably would have bought that from you.
Yeah, I've already committed to trading it.
Yeah.
I have it here, but I have to send that back. Yeah, so that's it for the tube shortages thing and related topics. Now we're going to talk about prosumer wireless gear, how that relates to me and studios.
Well, and it's, we've always done the home recording show, and it was always about studio recording, but so much of us, including us, are now shooting video, and that's kind of bled over into doing more audio video instead of just audio. And I'm sure we're not the only ones doing it. So I would imagine this would be interesting to most of our audience because they're also setting up cameras now.
So I'll just hold up this kit. It's called the Move Link from Godox. I did a video about this on my website.
Link below YouTube. In the comment section.
Yeah. So this is a digital wireless system, 2.4 gigahertz. You'll probably cringe at that. And 1/8-inch connections, built-in batteries, super simple to set up. Sounds pretty decent when you gain stage them correctly, when you've got a system that can record them without introducing any interference into that system. My problem with them was that if I plugged into the line in of my Zoom recorder to record along with my camera, that was getting noise from the recorder itself.
John and I spent some time troubleshooting that.
It was nuts. The same with my camera. Plugging right into the camera, I was picking up all sorts of noise. I tried different cables, all these sorts of things. But eventually I came to figure out the camera itself has a really terrible preamp. And so you have to turn down the preamp volume instead of being at unity or whatever the 0 equals in that. You have to set it to -12. And you send it the high gain signal from the receiver into the mic import. And then that works great.
And cameras traditionally, even higher end cameras, have horrible audio. Even cameras with XLR inputs, horrible audio, because they expect you to have a sound person there. They're putting the bare minimum into the audio portion. Yeah. All the money of that manufacturer of that camera is going towards the optics. Audio's an afterthought.
It's annoying because if you can get that right and you don't need to do very much editing, like if you can get a great sound into the camera, that saves you so much time. You don't need to sync your audio. Everything just works.
The only time I get good audio going to camera is if it's an AES connection. Then I can send one cable. I can send stereo across it. It's digital. It's as good as what I'm hearing in my headphones. Other than that, I don't trust it. I don't care what camera we're using. The Alexas are better, but I consider all of that, even at the highest levels, that reference audio.
Right. Yeah. It's just something to get sync.
Yeah, it's
the auto sync thing if you're not using time code.
Exactly. It's the other time code for me.
Yeah. I guess you could pipe time code into those cameras that way.
Well, you can, but then you have to have a specific software to read it. And then when you're not sending time code in the proper time code slot into its dedicated channel, then it doesn't sync up precisely to the shutter speed. So when you send time code, it actually synchronizes to that exact moment when the shutter happens on each frame. If you're introducing it as an audio file, it can be anywhere in those subframes where it's actually hitting. It'll be within a frame, but you can be plus or minus one frame, -1, basically.
Okay. So you probably hate digital wireless systems, anything on the 2.4 gigahertz.
Yeah, anything in the user frequencies, the 2.4, the 5 gigahertz, it's just such a noisy spectrum. Using them any more than a couple, 20 feet at the most, you're going to have all kinds of problems.
Yeah, these are supposed to have a 50-foot range. Mm-hmm. Line of sight is ideal. I haven't tested that far. There's other systems from Saramonic and Rode, the wireless Go 2. Mm-hmm. Similar systems in terms of shape and capacity and stuff like that, but they come with some different accessories like a case that charges them. This one has just kind of a passive case that holds the three units with one USB-C, no internal battery in the case. So, that adds extra cost to it. This is a $200 kit. And I think it's fine for a $200
And do you get two of them or one?
Yeah, 2 transmitters and a receiver, no internal recording, no internal SD cards, no removable batteries, very lightweight, compact design.
And at that price
point, for what they are.
If you're getting usable audio, that's amazing. If it sounds like something you could okay, I can put that on a YouTube channel. That's amazing.
For sure. Yeah. this allows you to do interviews without compromising on, having to mix it down to mono, right? You can record each channel separately, which gives you so much control in mixing. Or you can use a single one and record with 2 different volume settings for the safety track sort of thing. We talked about 32-bit recording in episode 309, and one of those strategies for using that was multiple gain stages. So that's another possibility with a kit like this, if you only need one channel. I've set it up with my camera, with a Zoom recorder. It sounds great over XLR, and any audio interface that has XLR, if you have the right adapter cable, that works great. Also got into the line in on my computer so I could use it for live streaming straight into OBS. It's just one other input I can connect, and then it works. I found it to be not exactly straightforward to get set up because of kind of all the variables of this input has a gain control. The mics and transmitters have their own gain control.
Mm-hmm. And that's with any wireless system. So that is the learning curve of getting into any wireless system. You have to realize, instead of plugging your classic SM58 into a cable into your preamp, that's one gain stage. That's it. When you're doing your wireless system, you have the gain stage of the microphone into the transmitter. You have the gain stage of the output of the receiver. Then you have the gain stage of the input of the camera. So you have 3 gain stages, or the input of your final recorder. So you're talking about 3 gain stages immediately instead of 1 that you're traditionally used to.
And any one of those can introduce noise.
Yep.
And pick up the wrong kind of signal for you. So they don't talk about it in the manuals. I've never seen a YouTube video going over this stuff. So
that's why camera people are immediately frustrated, and then they call me and give me a pile of money just to come over and make it work without any problems, because they have to shoot a thing.
Sure.
And I'm sure gain staging probably has made me more money than anything.
So another issue with that setup is the latency. There is a 65 millisecond delay of what I could measure. Anyways, I had a SM58 in front of me, and I had that wireless mic, both going into XLR inputs on my interface, recorded simultaneously. I measured the distance between the 2 claps, and that was 65 milliseconds. And that's a noticeable delay. If you plug your headphones into that receiver, you're going to hear it. If you try to monitor that through a mixer, you're going to hear that. So essentially, it's for reference, or for someone that's 50 feet away. Cool.
Or if that's the only mic in the situation.
Yeah. So you can monitor on the receiver with a delay. You don't know what the camera is actually picking up. And one of the things I was recording, I was getting interference. I had no way of knowing until after the recording that was happening, because a lot of cameras don't have headphone jacks after the preamp, right? If they have a headphone jack at all.
And that's why once you get into doing your wireless mics, you want to have an independent recorder or mixer for monitoring, because even with the best of the best, interference happens. I was just doing yesterday on set, I have 12 wireless microphones on this show, and we had doing a wireless scan. I picked out all the frequencies. I have a program that will show me what frequencies are good, which ones are bad, intermods in between the ones I choose, all of it laid out in a graphical interface on my computer. I got everything dialed in perfect. And then 5 minutes later, one of the frequencies I had chosen that was wide open, no longer wide open. Don't know where it's coming from. Can't find it. It's not our stuff. Make that adjustment. And had I not had that piece of software up, had I not been monitoring that, had I not noticed, that could have gone out on talent, and we could have had RF hits immediately blowing a take. So
right. Interference, it's like ringing frequencies, or just noisy fuzz, or what kind of
there's a whole
issues?
bunch of stuff you can have, all different kinds of sounds, especially based on the different kinds of systems you have. You're talking about digital systems or digital hybrid systems. Analog is more susceptible. It'll pick up a wider range. Digital has...
But there's less latency with that.
Yes, so that's going to be the one thing that separates the inexpensive digital from the expensive digital, is going to be things like that latency, things like the line of sight. being able to swap out different microphones into that system.
Yeah.
All of those kind of options. From what you just were talking about, there's a couple in that kind of vein. The next step up to semi-professional would be like the Sennheiser G4. And
okay. I've used the G3s before. I found them kind of complicated.
Yep.
In a way.
And the layers of complication also continue to go up once you start getting into several more options.
Does the G4 have a built-in battery yet? Or are they still AA's?
I think there's still AA's in the G4s.
Okay.
But then you can get into Sennheiser has a higher end. Shure has amazing wireless now. Their wireless is excellent. I know some sound mixers that are going off Lectrosonics to go all Shure wireless. Guitar players use Shure a lot. We've seen more and more of it. They're excellent. Then there's Lectrosonics. There's the Zaxcom. There's the WheezyCom. There are a lot of high-end mic manufacturers. They all have some things they do better, some things they do worse. I tend to go with Lectrosonics. I really like their products. But
what do you own? You own a set?
Lectrosonics, yeah. I own like 15 of them.
Okay.
But
so if we're talking about an interview setup for, let's say, maybe it's a podcast, you got to do a remote interview and you want to do it on camera with no visible mics. You're going with a pair of lavs. This kit does that for $200.
Yeah.
What's the Lectrosonics version of that?
That's going to be $1,500 for the transmitter. That's going to be another $1,500-ish for the receiver. And then you're about $350, $400 for a microphone. Then into your mixer, and whatever mixer you're running there, could be something simple. And then XLR.
Could be an audio interface.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, you're talking about easily $3,500 for one mic, and then $3,500 for another mic, transmitter, receiver. And then also I would fly 2 boom mics over the top of that. So then you have 2 416s above each person's head. So 4 channels in. Usually depends on what sounds best in that environment. Normally I'd go with the boom mics if I can get them in close enough because they always sound better. But if it's a noisy environment or they're shooting really wide shots, then I'd mix the lavs in for reference.
Cool. So not even close, not even comparable, really.
No.
Would there be a use for the cheaper wireless kits in, approaching your level of film production? Is there anything that's cheaper than the Lectrosonics, or I guess the Shures are cheaper, maybe?
They're all pretty ballpark. Once you get into the stuff that's commonly used, they're all, $1,500 each, pretty much.
And do you need a separate receiver for each mic?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I have a couple that are 2-channel, but they're $3,000 for 2-channel, and then it'll have 2 XLRs out. The G3s are what I started with, and I had 3 or 4 of those pairs. Now I just use those as wireless sends to camera for reference. So I have one transmitter in my bag, and then I can have 4 receivers, and those 4 receivers will all pick up that one transmitter. And those are analog.
So 4 mono analog sends for monitor,
or one send, 4 receives. So I can have 4 cameras each with a receiver send out that one feed. So if it's on a 4-camera shoot, I can send wireless to all 4 cameras from that one G3 transmitter that's in my bag, taking the main out.
And so that would be a sync reference.
Mm-hmm.
So the editor can take any one of those camera feeds, not have to mix the audio, and because there's always the same audio feed in each of the cameras.
Yeah. So each of those cameras will have a timecode reference and that audio reference, so they can sync either way. And then there'll also be a timecode slate at the top of the take. So they have 3 different ways they can sync audio.
Cool. Seems complicated, but
it's wildly complicated. And yeah, once you start getting into the higher levels, it's a lot more stuff and it's all what's expected. It's all industry standard. So, and then also you're doing some of these interviews. It's the cost of all of that gear and paying for the crew is completely inconsequential to the thing they're shooting. They might have some, sports legend or an actor that had an hour in their schedule and they won't be able to get them again for a year to interview for something that's important, or that thing that they're doing has to be perfect. That's why we're using the top gear. We can monitor things. We can configure it just right. We have the boom mic and the lav to capture that audio. The professionals that know how to operate all of the gear and are monitoring every portion of it, because there is a zero failure option.
Okay, we're going off topic a little bit, but
as we usually do.
So we've talked about the three main topics we wanted to talk about, but now that we're on the live sound thing, not live sound, now that we're on the film production sound, I would like to ask you about wireless boom mics. Is that something you see a lot, something you do, something you approve of?
Yeah. Yeah, we do it all the time. I would love to run copper for everything. I'd love to run copper up actors' legs and, have nice mics on them, but it's not the reality. But I do have plug-on transmitters that we plug onto the boom pole. That is the same Electrosonics transmitter. It's but it has an XLR just at the end of it. So that plugs in, and then the boom ops can be out and away. Don't have to worry about wire. They also have a wireless IFB that they can listen to the mix. So they have their headphones plugged in wirelessly in a little pack, and they're running around with a wireless boom. And I have two of those out on this show, and that's channels 1 and 2, booms 1 and 2. And we'll pick off the scene in these huge, complicated, moving fast. That's part of the reason, is because we move so fast. Sometimes we don't know what the shot is until they say roll sound. And we're like, oh, what are we looking at? Okay, well, the cameras just came down. That's the frame. Okay, chase that camera.
And you don't want to have cables in the way.
Can't. It's just not an option.
Yeah.
And I have antennas.
And sound quality is...
They're great.
Is okay with that stuff. It's actually great.
Again, there's the gain staging. So I will sometimes tell the boom up, hey, this scene, there's going to be some yelling. So I need you to gain down 3 dB on your transmit to me. And then also when this person starts screaming, boom up. So we have some distance on it too. So I can have them basically mix that audio with the positioning of the mic plus the safety of changing the gain. Like we talked about a couple episodes ago in 32-bit technologies, and like that, having multiple gain stages built into a device.
Yeah.
The new Shure device has a 2 gain stage thing, and it will choose between the two, which one it's using to make sure you never get distorted audio, and then even all that out with some kind of algorithm. So it's actually doing that in the boom plug-on transmitter. There's almost no gain setting for that. So that might be something I'll look into. I know one of the guys I work with just ordered it, hasn't gotten it yet, but I'm definitely going to try that out. And that would be amazing if that works out as marketed.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see a demo of that compared to traditional way.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 2-stage, and then maybe... What's the other option? Recording into something that sends stereo, but at 2 different levels.
And that's easy enough to do with copper, because you can split that off at the mic and then send it to 2 preamps and with 2 very different gain settings and record those.
Is there any issues with impedance splitting? I guess you're going. Are you going line out? Is it
no? You can split it a mic level,
or
yeah, you can split mic level, and it is a transformer. So it will take care of the impedance loading.
Yeah, I was wondering even what output level and impedance and all that kind of stuff comes out of the receivers. Like that's mic level, right?
Yeah.
Or that line level.
Line level. There's adjustments, but I run all of the outputs as hot as they'll go coming out of the receivers, because it's not a gain so much as it is just padding. So it's not like it's adding more gain when you go up to 100% on these devices. It's normal output. So you can pad it down, but you can't gain it up. So I just want it coming out clean.
That's one of those things that you run into with the consumer stuff where you don't know if it's adding.
And so a lot of the consumer stuff might be adding gain.
Yeah, exactly.
With a cheap gain circuit, which is also coloring your sound and making it unhappy.
Spending 10 minutes or so doing test recordings at different levels, and then I saw a guy with the Panasonic GH5, which is $1,000 camera, and his -12 setting was like super noisy, but his -11 was clean.
Hmm.
And
That's a
like
Spinal Tap joke in there somewhere.
something like that. So it was like the optimal position for it is not all the way down. It had like this horrible like hum and noise at that low level. And then, so it's one of those things like such a rabbit hole to test all of your gear at every different level because you wouldn't expect the sound to change that much.
No.
With just what should be just a straight volume adjustment. And it does seem to do something.
And I know different cameras, like when I put my G3s on camera, some cameras, I ideally always want to set them to line level and then send them a hot signal. Yep. But most of the time it doesn't.
Hot signal as in what, -6?
Yeah, like a line level signal, like -6 or even 0 dB as my send level. But most of the time it's too low. So then I have to go to mic setting and then pad my transmitter to even get tone to be hitting -20. So
that's odd. But
it is.
Doesn't make sense, but you got to do it to make it make sense.
And I know which brand of camera is going to make it easy on me and which isn't. So, the Canon C300s have been easy for me to deal with. The Reds are the worst. The Sonys, depending upon which model, can be temperamental. And usually the cameras that have the best image quality have some of the worst audio input. The middle of the road, like the Canon C300s, are good all around. They get decent audio, they get decent video. They're not doing excellent on anything. But
experience with the Sonys?
Oh yeah, a lot. The super high-end Sonys, I love those cameras because they do have AES in. So for sit-down interviews, hardwire AES all day, every day. When it comes to reference audio, they're decent, but unless I'm sending a hard line XLR, even for analog, I'd still call that reference.
Well, the audience is going to hate that we've done another episode on production sound, but maybe we've got it out of our system because we've not talked for 5 years, and
that's most of my world
stories now. Yeah. So, and I dip my toes in it with the YouTube production. So, it's interesting to me, and hopefully we keep it interesting by having a conversation about something that's interesting to us.
Well, send us comments. We want some feedback. Let us know. If you hate the production stuff, tell us. If you love it, tell us. If there's specific topics you guys want us to talk about, let us know. But we're just talking about what we're up to these days, and hopefully people are into it. And usually when we're enjoying what we're doing, most people go along with it. Even if it's a topic they're not particularly interested in, there's usually something in there that might apply to something else.
Yeah. I mean, at least we're not talking about potentiometers this time.
Yeah. My next episode's all about impedance. We're going to go deep on impedance and mostly the impedance of potentiometers. So it's going to be good. It's going to be real good.
Right.
We literally have done that episode.
We have. All right. Thank you everyone for watching and listening. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Thanks so much. See you soon.